Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan, and we're going to complete on this edition of Inside the Birds our 53-man roster projection. Got to go with defense, which Adam and I told you at the end of our last podcast, a lot more difficult to project the defensive side than the offensive side for a lot of obvious reasons. So we'll get into that. Also, the NFL schedule, it came out the day our last podcast came out. So now we'll finally get a chance to make sense of the order. And there's a little bit of a murderer's row there that we're going to discuss later in this podcast. Listen, we all knew who their opponents were going to be. You just didn't know how they were going to play them. There's one game that's mind-boggling to me. And then there's a streak of games that I think we'll discuss that they might, let's just say, would they go last year 14-3? That's going to be a challenge. It's
going to be hard. I mean, looking at the way these teams look like now, not the strength of schedule. I mean, you got to look at the way the teams look now based on coaching changes, philosophy changes, and obviously personnel changes. So a lot of things have changed. And then one of the core, I look at a lot of different things with schedules.
Yeah.
So on the Eagles, they only play one team that's changed head coaches, but they're facing a lot of teams who've changed coordinators or play callers. It's really interesting. We'll get into that a little bit more than I expected when I examined this thing. So we'll get into that, and there'll be certainly some challenges.
That is interesting that you bring that up because the Eagles themselves are changing play callers at both offensive and defensive spots too. So they're one of those teams.
Yep.
So a lot of that going on in the NFL, and we got a treat. The Eagles finally introduced us to their new defensive coordinator, Sean Desai. They had the press conferences with the coordinators on Friday. And so let me just get your initial thoughts. We know how the Nick Sirianni press conference went, the first one. It was terrible, but it meant nothing, right? He's obviously done a great job as a coach. So I try not to put too much into press conferences, whether I like them or dislike them. However, one thing that stood out to me, Adam, was Sean Desai. And I'm going to say this is from being a Northeast guy. He's from Connecticut, and he went to Temple. He coached there. He was a student there as well. I think he kind of gets what the Northeast is about and why defense is really important in Philadelphia, maybe more so than some other cities. And that was communicated in his press conference when he said, we want to be palpable. I want them to feel this defense. But he didn't just say, I want them to feel it on the field. He said, I want people watching at home to feel us. That to me was good connection from the start.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. All that really matters is how he calls the game. That's
totally
the only way he's going to be evaluated. However, and someone said he was pandering to the I thought this is kind of funny. In social media, someone said he was trying to pander because he worked in this area. Look, I remember Chip Kelly. What's that?
I didn't think he went overboard. No, yeah.
I thought he was real. Look, Chip Kelly played to a little bit when he came here because he recruited out east. Do you know he recruited John DeFilippo? John told us that.
Yes.
He told us this crazy. Did he tell us the story on the air?
I think he told it to us for our Patreon subscribers.
Okay. So very quickly, yeah. So John was recruited by Chip. We'll get into that story down the line, but and Chip knew WIP. He knew all about it, and obviously he's from the East Coast, so he got it, and then he recruited in this area, so he knew about WIP and all that. But Chip obviously didn't handle himself all that well here, and it didn't work out in the end. But where this guy decides he's a young coordinator, I think he's around 40. And by the way, the Eagles have, if not the youngest coordinator staff, one of the youngest in the National Football League. So which is interesting, That's guys are going to be calling in the plays at wherever they're at. They're going to be under the pressure cooker here because the expectations are pretty high.
Yeah, I would say so. And listen, I made a point. I wrote a column about him. It's on InsideTheBirds.com. Encourage everybody to check it out. Just on sort of like you just said, the expectations are high, not only coming off last year, but I don't think that there's really been a defensive coordinator in this town since Jim Johnson who's really connected well with the fans. And someone reached out and said, we like Jim Schwartz. And mildly, for a guy who had like 2 defenses finish in the top 10, it was always, he doesn't blitz enough. Wide 9, wide 9. The way people adored Jim Johnson,
he was the best.
It's not the same way people adore Jim Schwartz. And Schwartz won a Super Bowl, but again, his team gave up 500 yards, and nobody remembers that they did awesomely against Atlanta in the first, saved the team against Atlanta in the first round, and then of course against the Vikings there in the conference finals.
And by the way, Nick Foles bailed out Jim Schwartz. Okay, let's leave it at that.
Yes, Nick Foles bailed out, but in fairness, Jim Schwartz bailed out Nick Foles against the Falcons.
Yes, they did play very well. Yeah, it was down to one play, of course.
Right.
But no, it giving up a historic amount of yardage. That was incredible. But yeah, in the end, Desai will be evaluated by how he does, and because he only called a defense for 1 year, and by all accounts, he did a nice job. But this is the most talent he'll have worked with by far in his career anywhere he's been.
Right.
And I know that, and talking to Seahawks source, they really liked him. They in his role that he had there, they liked him a lot, and they certainly wanted him around a long time. But obviously, he got a coordinator offer here, so he's taking it, and we'll see how he does. But man, this and we'll get into this. Obviously, that over half of the show is going to be what the defense looks like for our 53, our initial 53, or super early 53. But there's a lot of talent on this defense.
Right. And again, as you pointed out, it doesn't matter what he connects or not connects, likable, not likable. What matters is, does he call a good defense and do they do well? But as we just saw with Gannon, who did call it, he produced the number 2 defense in the NFL. He was never liked. And then the Super Bowl was just another reason to kind of pour salt on him. So we'll see if Sean Desai can break that mold and really, and again, I think Schwartz was mildly liked, but he was a weird guy. So I don't know that he connected with the city. Now, every once in a while I throw a baseball reference in, so all the baseball fans would like that, but hopefully Sean Desai can break the mold.
I really enjoyed Schwartz's press conferences. I really did. He's a master of the malaprop. I mean, he just would say, he would say some stuff like, wait, what the hell did he just say? What does he mean by that?
Yeah.
That you would start to understand over time what exactly he meant, because he had his sort of Schwartzisms, and every coordinator, and they have to speak eventually, and this guy just did decide. You start to figure out what they mean and what what kind of what direction they're going to go in with their press conferences over time, and certain areas they won't go because they don't want to talk about it. And Schwartz, there's certain things that Schwartz wouldn't do, but if the questions were good enough, and he also had a pretty good rapport, I thought, with the media here over time. Because then, boy, in Detroit, he got combative, and look, when you work in Detroit, I mean, they know nothing about losing. Although, man, the NFL is really bullish on them. They got 4 primetime games.
Yeah, how about that? Amazing. By the way, the best Eagles press conferences of the last 10 to 12 years that nobody heard of because they didn't care to listen to it were Bobby April's, the special teams coordinator for Chip. He was really good. He was brilliant. He wasn't a salesman. He had really interesting things to say, but nobody listens to this special teams coordinators press conferences. So, I mean, like, the fans don't get into that. So.
Bobby April, and I know he was awful here. He was an absolute legend many years ago in a couple stops, Rams and a couple others. And then by the time he came here, he was cashed. Well, do you remember what years he was here?
Bobby April?
Yeah.
He was here for the Chip Kelly era. So, no, I'm sorry. He was not, because Chip Kelly hired Dave Phipp, didn't he?
Right. Wasn't it Andy?
I think he was yes. When Andy made all those different changes on special teams, he hired, on the coaching staff, Bobby April was one of them.
This is just one thing, and we mentioned this a couple shows ago, but just about the change in the Eagles coaching staff. When Andy lost his way is when he lost a lot of his key lieutenants over time. And Sirianni's lost some really good coaches. Now, he's promoted some guys from within, and he's also hired some very talented coaches from other places, but we'll see. I mean, there's no question, if you continue to lose coaches over the years, it just shows that there's going to be a loss of just high level coaching. It's hard to get that once you lose it. So we'll see what happens. But based on what we've heard so far, and I know people are pretty happy inside there for what they have.
No doubt about it. All right, so a couple things ITB related for the future. We are going to have Greg Cosell back with us pretty quickly. He's going to do, this was a great idea. I think this was your idea, Adam, like sort of a schedule breakdown with us. He's going to come on, and we know the 11, I think it's 11 different teams that the Eagles are playing this year. And he's going to go through each team with us and sort of break down what they do, their schemes, what to watch for, anything new about them. as they, will play the Eagles this year. So it was a great idea. I think people will learn a lot, as they always do, when Greg Cosell is on with us. So look forward to that. And your Adam Caplan, your post-draft power rankings 1.0 coming out this week. I'm excited for that.
Well, I actually finished them. I just finished them, but I haven't put the written part out.
Okay.
And this is strictly based on what the teams look like now, based on coaching changes, personnel changes. And now, obviously, the two teams who won the Super Bowl are going to be pretty high, but this has nothing to do with the schedule. It's just about, okay, what do these teams look like roster-wise with all the changes in free agency in the draft,
right?
And coaching changes with coordinators and head coaches and so forth. So, that's what you do power rankings with this early for, is to give people an idea of how things have changed. And then, once I get through training camp and so forth, I'll obviously things will change and I'll get a better idea. Look, I'm not always going to see what I think. Sometimes I see is not what happens. I'm with Jacksonville for a day and a half.
Right.
I'm like, they're not going to do anything this year. Jeez. That was one I just didn't. Nobody. By the way, no one saw it.
No.
When I was talking about doing the NFL future numbers, that was one where I completely missed. I like the under 5.5. I went up going 6-4 on them, and I missed that one badly. That was one I looked at back. Totally. That in Denver, that was terrible.
Well, you can grill Adam about that on Wednesday if you're a Patreon subscriber when he does his Discord chat. Make sure you hammer him on those. Those are Wednesday, 8:00. We did do our special 30-minute question and answer podcast for our Patreon subscribers. It's up there. If you subscribe, you can check it out. We had good questions, and I thought it really made us give thought-provoking answers. Thanks to all those who have subscribed since then. We appreciate you hopping on board with us, and we are working on our next podcast for Patreon subscribers as well. So we'll have more information on that as soon as it develops. And always as a reminder that Inside the Birds is presented by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort. They are in Atlantic City. They are the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. All right. Why don't we go inside the schedule a little bit? So there's one game, and it's not that I knew that the Eagles were going to play them. I'm just shocked about the, I guess, publicity that this game is getting. Do you smell what I'm cooking here? Is
it week one?
Not week one.
Okay. With Brady, returning is going to get honored, but it's
no, because the Patriots are a big market team. They're,
And by the way, on what you just said, so I was on the NFL's call last week. New England, despite what's happened in the last couple of years, they didn't say Belichick. They just said that their history, they're almost like a legacy team. Because they keep using this term legacy. Like Green Bay has got 5 primetime games, but Aaron Rodgers is traded. Well, they call them a legacy team. So now, if Green Bay falls flat in the face, they may only get 2 the following year. But I will go on your question.
There's one game that jumps out.
December, the Niner game? The Niner game? No, really? Who the hell?
All right. You tell me why the NFL thinks Eagles-Buccaneers is a Monday Night Football game week 3. What about the Buccaneers screams they should be on prime time against the Eagles?
I don't understand. Isn't that bizarre to you? Why the hell?
Yes, completely. It's what Tom Brady is retired, correct?
And they were 8-9 with them last. I know.
If it was a Thursday night game, I might get it just because there are a lot of Thursday night. Although they're trying to rectify that. But what about the Buccaneers screams Monday Night Football?
I'm just. I don't get it, man. It's just so stupid. Yeah,
I joke with a friend of mine. It must be that great storyline about Brian Johnson, the Eagles offensive coordinator, facing Kyle Trask, his former, protege or pupil, right? Because wasn't Brian Johnson the OC at Florida when Trask? Yes. Okay, must have been a really exciting storyline that they want to profile.
I don't know. It's just it's hilarious. I just think it's dumb. It's weird. I don't get. I would say by and large, the NFL does a phenomenal job with the schedule. In fact, this is the just talking to teams. Now I didn't talk to the Giants yet, but their schedule is ridiculously tough in terms of the 7 of their first 11 games are away. I don't understand that. That should never happen because you're allowed to.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Joe Batters explained to us a couple years ago. The NFL wants all of your conflicts, all the issues that you have, and they try to do their best to work around it. there's who the hell wants 7 of the first 11 games away? It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
It's bad. I mean, I guess the good thing is this is the Giants, right? That you're
Yes.
talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
The good thing is that you get a ton of home games in December when it matter, like when it starts to round up, but you hope to not be out of it by then. I mean, that's really difficult. I know one of the road games is Washington, so it's not like you're getting on a plane.
Yeah.
And one is the Jets. I think they play the Jets, so it's maybe their own stadium. So although that one is a home game for them, either way. They're not always getting on airplanes, but I agree. I just don't understand that. I think it's stupid. So yeah, they generally do a good job, but there are a few games that teams play each year where you just look and you say, oh, like last year, wasn't it the Cowboys? Didn't they have like 2 10-day breaks between games because it was Thanksgiving and then they played the next following Sunday and then they had the bye and then they played like the next Thursday night game. So it was kind of ridiculous. It was
the Eagles have the Eagles have some short weeks because of this is going to happen when you play on Monday night. You have a short week, so that's going to happen. Or as they do, they play Sunday at the Patriots and they play Thursday at home. Such a schedule quirk. 2 years in a row, they play at home in a primetime game against Minnesota in week 2.
Yeah, that is that jumped out at me too. Like that's really weird. And only 3 1:00 games. I don't know. Maybe I would love to hear how our listeners feel about this. I would guess they vary from different ages, but I like I don't mind primetime games, even though for us reporters it kind of sucks. But I like a few primetime games because they're always most watched and it's exciting, but I like 1:00 games too. I mean, to only have 3 1:00 games, I don't like that. I don't know. There's a purist in me that likes the 1:00 football kickoff for the Eagles.
And it's just funny that Washington, who doesn't have any, they're sort of a legacy team, but they've been so bad for so long. 2 out of the 3 1:00 games against Washington. It's just
well, yeah.
It's just funny.
Sort of makes sense.
And then Arizona's got to come in here on a pretty significant time change in week 17. Now, listen to the NFL. This is interesting. Yes, the maximum primetime games you could have is 6. However, you could even if you have 6 primetime games, you could actually have 7.
Yep.
If your game gets flexed, if that's what the networks wants, yes. So yeah, they could. A team that's got 6 could get 7, so that's a little schedule quirk, if you will. But yeah, so week 10 bye. This year they got the 8 home games, 9 away. Last year was 9 home games, 8 away games. The preseason games are Cleveland comes in here. Remember, they're going to have joint practices with the Browns. We'll definitely be there for that, as we were last year. That was phenomenal. I remember someone with the Browns telling me he thought the Eagles were maybe the best team in the NFC just based on what they saw in joint practices. How prescient. And then they play the Colts here. And then they're at the Ravens, and from what I mean, the word is that it's not totally out of the picture to have another set of joint practices with either team. Nothing scheduled, but it wouldn't be a surprise if maybe they have joint practice with either the Colts or the Ravens, because I know both teams have had them in years past. I've been to the Colts and also the Ravens with John Harbaugh having them before.
Now, interestingly, and I think this is the first time in a while, they don't play any of these teams this year, correct?
Yeah, they don't play the Jets. They don't play.
They didn't. Wait, hold on. I'm wrong. Because last year they did not play the Browns or the Dolphins, correct?
Right. And they play the Dolphins this year, but they play the. Don't they? Do they play the Browns? I thought they did play them. No. Let me see.
They did not play the Browns this year.
Do they play them this year though? I'm just talking about the preseason. So they're playing the preseason. No,
but they are playing. It's weird. They're playing the Dolphins this year, but they're not practicing in the preseason. They're not playing the Dolphins in the preseason this year. They're playing them in the regular.
Right. So those would be 2 at home, 1 away, and week 10 bye. And coaches will tell you they want it somewhere in the middle. They definitely don't want it weeks 4 or 5. They just don't want it early, and they don't want it late. How about Trey? Was it Trey told us? Trey Thomas?
Yes.
The last week
they had a week 17 bye, which I didn't even believe. What? No, wait. Because there weren't 17 weeks. There was, it was like week 15 or 16, and I didn't believe him. I had to go look it up. I didn't think they had buys that late.
It's ridiculous. That's when by the way, that's when they did them by hand. Back then, now they do it by computer. In fact, Amazon, they were in partnership with Amazon AWS to do it. But anyway, so those will be the as you said, only 3 1:00 games, and then I always when I look at the schedules, I also look, okay, any streaks of games, like, okay, do they play 3 at home in a row,
Yep.
3 away at home? But not really. But they have 3 out of 4 games away. Week 5, they're at the Rams. Week 6 at the Jets. 7 at home. Then week 8 at Washington. Now, the good thing is at least 3 of them on the East Coast, but they started off out on the West Coast, and also they have 2 West Coast trips at the Rams and at the Seahawks.
Well, I think, obviously what jumps out to you from a streaks or, games in a row standpoint, Adam, is coming out of the bye at Kansas City. Then you got, what is it, Buffalo, San Francisco, at Dallas, at New York, or first New York on Christmas. Isn't that how it goes?
Yeah, so it goes. And by the way, the Eagles and Chiefs have a Week 10 bye, so at least they're not neither team's getting a disadvantage. But oh boy, that's
murderer's row.
Mahomes, Josh Allen, while Purdy is nothing special, but the team is sure as hell is great. So it's after the bye, it's at Kansas City, home against the Bills, home against the Niners, then at the Cowboys. Yeah, and then by the way, at the Seahawks.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. The Seahawks.
Yeah, that's the Week 15 game at Seattle. And then they're home for 2.
That's brutal.
Yeah. So against the Giants and Cardinals, and then at the Giants. So look, and then they got 5 primetime games, which I was thinking about this the other day. The Eagles, to me, they got their quarterback with these receivers, with this offensive line. We know they're going to be one of the top scoring teams. There's a ton of talent in defense.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, you could pretty much count on the Eagles for a minimum of 4 primetime games a year over the next 3 or 4 years. I'm quite frankly, I'm shocked that they not shocked, but I'm a little surprised they didn't get 6. They have 5. And they could obviously have 1 flex to 6.
Yep.
But yeah, that's it. They're one of those teams. They certainly had their dry spell over the years where they didn't have as many as you'd like when they weren't good, but just listen to this call last week. The league clearly is about quarterbacks and success. Mm-hmm. And they talked about how they do a projection of how, they thought Russell Wilson go to Denver. They thought Denver would be a good team. They weren't. They didn't know that. But they're still with Sean Payton. They did talk about it. 4 primetime games because Sean Payton's there. So
yeah, of course. A lot of intrigue, man. A lot of intrigue. But this schedule compared to last year's schedule is no joke. And the Eagles could very well be, by the end of the year, a better team, a more improved team than even this past year, their Super Bowl year. But the record may not be as good just because you're going to have to survive there in that November, December stretch. That's going to be a tough one. Congratulations goes out to Jalen Hurts for getting his master's degree at Oklahoma. And also, we should say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I imagine that's a very small percentage of Inside the Birds listeners, but very significant nonetheless. If you're a mother and you listen to Inside the Birds, we love you and we appreciate everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hope Sunday went well for people as we turn the page, obviously going forward here. OTAs are coming up. Oh, one other. Okay. I want to get into this before we go over our projection. Mm-hmm. It's weird. The Eagles only play one team with a new head coach, and that's Gannon in 17. But listen to all the new play calls and defensive scheme change and offensive scheme changes.
Yeah.
So Bill O'Brien week 1. And they're going to be better because Mac Jones struggled last season because he had Matt Patricia. Ironically, Matt Patricia in Philly. Week 2, Brian Flores, the new D coordinator with Minnesota. He's a pretty aggressive play caller. He doesn't run the Fancho system. He runs the Belichick system. Week 3, new play caller, Dave Canales comes over from Seattle. He's never called plays before. He was the quarterback's coach. I don't think he's called plays before. I certainly did.
Dave Canales is for who?
The Bucks.
The Bucks, right? Okay, my fault. Yeah.
Yep. And then Eric Bieniemy. Yep. In week 4 and week 8, so that he's going to run some of Andy's concepts, and he's a run game guy. He's not so much as a pass game guy, but he's going to bring Andy's concepts in. Week 6, Nate Hackett and Aaron Rodgers, they're running the old school West Coast offense. He's running Green Bay's offense. Vic Fangio, week 7, running the Vic Fangio defense here in Philly. That'll be interesting. And by the way, Mike McCarthy is running his offense now. He runs an old school West Coast offense. He's running the Green Bay offensive scheme. That's different from the Kellen Moore offense. That's why he's running it. Matt Nagy is the new OC for Kansas City, and he calls the plays. A couple big ones here. Sean McDermott is calling the plays this year. Leslie Frazier's taking a year off.
Right.
So that's in week 12 here in Philly. Week 13, Steve Wilkes is a new D coordinator. With the Niners, they're still running the wide nine, I'm told, so it's not going to change. But how he calls the game might be different from D'Amico Ryans. And then Gannon obviously is going to run a 34 front. With Nick Rawless is 28-year-old defensive coordinator, man. But I assume Gannon will call the plays. I don't know, actually. I don't know what they're going to do.
We'll see. That'll be pretty interesting. I thought Gannon said he was not going to call the plays.
Yeah, that's why I just said that. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought he said he talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if he gives Rawless the play calling responsibilities, by the way, that's been the trend around the league, particularly in offense. Some of these new head coaches over the years, they've handed off play calling, if not year one, year two.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard Frank Reich, someone told me, might later in the season, maybe if not this season, maybe next year, might give the play calling up to Thomas Brown. Because the CEO head coach stuff, what happens is, they like to see how things are going, and then if they think they're doing well, they hand it off. Like Kevin Stefanski, I think he's going to call the plays this year, but he's handed off before. He's taking it back. We know Joe Banner told us he lost count of how many times Andy Reid gave up the play calling and the media didn't know it.
Right.
The Marty Morningweg. So yeah, look, it's what the coach thinks he needs to do.
No doubt about it. All right, it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer, and they can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife, and lineup in AC. The debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes, so be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. That's Ocean Casino Resort. It's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. All right, let's talk 53-man roster and defense. You and I had pretty similar 53-man rosters on offense, give or take maybe 2 or 3 guys we saw differently. We'll see on defense, Adam, if we can come to an agreement here on who's in and who's out. Let's start off with defensive end. You give me your defensive ends.
Well, Sweat, Graham, and Barnett are the 3. Barnett, we were told a couple months ago, would be on the team this season. So barring a change in heart, he'll be here. We know this from what we've been told. They really want to take a look at Janoris Robinson. Length. They like the height, weight, speed stuff, and they just want to see what he can do. He's a guy that I'm really going to be watching in OTAs when we get to watch, and then obviously in training camp and see what we find out on him. But I can't put him on it now. Because, see, the thing is I struggle with as I went through here, this is the first year in years where there's real competition for certain spots. And there's just, like a cornerback, they have so many of them. I get that half of them are undrafted free agent or bottom of the end guys. But there's also opportunity for some of these guys. And the offseason will start to get an idea, and then obviously training camp will all heat up.
Yeah, I am with you. I have Brandon Graham, I have Derek Barnett, and I have Josh Sweat making it as defensive ends. Some of the guys, as I look at both of ours, like you might call an edge, or I might, call a D lineman. But yeah, those are, I have those 3 as well. So we are in lockstep on that as well. You overall kept between defensive ends, defensive tackles, and call them Sams or edges. You kept, I want to say 12. Yeah, between them. 12. And I wound up keeping 12 also. So, but there is a slight difference we've got, I guess, as far as edge players. So we'll get into that. But I have the same 3 D ends. It does feel, though, that unless you consider some of their Sam potential guys or backup D, it feels a little thin to me, right? I mean, only having, and I get it that you really only have one defensive end on the field because the other guy is a stand-up edge rusher, and it's a little bit different because he's a Sam. But 3, knowing Derek Barnett's history and Brandon Graham's age, it still feels a little thin. Wouldn't you agree there?
Yeah, in fact, to me, Nolan Smith, it just depends how Desai sees it. In the Gannon scheme, you had your overhangs, you had your 2 overhangs, but the one was Reddick. But you could run a Pittsburgh 34 where you definitely have, you got the 2 overhang players, but both are pass rushers. Not one is a run guy, one Pittsburgh's, both those guys could rush the passer, whereas here it's Reddick and maybe the other guys are more of a run game guy, or we'll see how he looks at it. But Nolan Smith, look, he's played DN before. It's not like he hasn't done it. He's just smaller than you would like, and this is what teams that we talked to had an issue with. It's like, how are you going to use him? But has him as a joker. You could play him as an inside linebacker, which I think Greg Cosell said that. He said he could see him playing stack linebacker, on maybe as a weak side linebacker. I know someone asked us that on our Apple comments, and it's a great question. We'll talk to Greg about it later this week. But that's the thing we don't know about Desai, because he's new here. He hasn't coached any of these guys before, so that'll be a challenge.
Right. All right, well, let's move to defensive tackle. This is where we have one slight difference. So you give me your defensive tackles.
All right, so this is where, if Janoris Robinson doesn't make it, then I'll get into that. So I've got Cox, Carter, Davis, Milton Williams, obviously. Contavious Street, I'm putting him on here. The guaranteed money is minimal, but they have a role for him. So I have him making the team here. Now, Moro Ojomo, for now, I'm going to put him on here. But that's why I brought up Janoris Robinson. If we hear Robinson's kicking ass, I'm not putting Moro Ojomo on the team. They don't need to keep 60 tackles. And Milton Williams, we know, could play D. In fact, that's why I only have 3 DNs, because Milton Williams will get some snaps there, as he did last season, and he has before here with the Eagles. So it's a little tough because I don't have Tui Pelotu, Noah Ellis. The Moro Ojomo, to me, he's got to earn his way here. You really don't want to. You don't need to keep 6 defensive tackles. It's just a matter of, okay, who stands out in training camp.
Totally agree with you on both accounts. That's why I went with 5 defensive tackles. And again, we're just sort of going off of what we know now. The competition will handle itself in camp, but knowing how, at least the last 2 years, this team has seemed to keep its 6th and 7th rounders and not be afraid to get rid of maybe a 1-year veteran signing. So I have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams 4, and Moro Ojomo I had as my 5th, and I have them forcing Contavious Street off because I kept an extra guy who you can either consider an edge or a DN. So we'll get it. You already mentioned his name. We'll get him to him in a minute. But I agree with you. You don't need 6. I have Ojomo making it. I think it's good value. I think they're going to find that he fits what they're looking for in a defensive tackle with that upfield burst. I know a source had told me that they felt that he was Texas's, a personnel source told me he thought that Texas's best interior rusher was Ojomo, and that they got good value in that pick there. Andrew DeCecco was a big fan of Ojomo too. He thought it was a really good value pick for the Eagles as well. So Contavious Street, like you mentioned, there's a very minimal guaranteed money. If you beat him out, you beat him out. It's like Jaquiski Tart. If he doesn't do well, or if he's not for whatever reason what you want, then you can move on. It's not a big deal there.
Sure.
So that's what I've got.
So yeah, we have one difference there. Let's get to the linebacker group.
Let's make it the edge Sam linebacker first.
Okay, so I've got Reddick, Smith are obvious. Now, this is where there's a numbers game. Kyron Johnson is their fastest special teams player. Patrick Johnson he's just an average player. There's nothing special. He doesn't need to make the team. Kyron Johnson's a guy they knew was smaller. He could play the Sam spot, but obviously Nolan Smith probably will line up there. How could they use him? Is he just going to be a special teams player? Maybe so. I got him on the team. So those 3 guys, I got Reddick, Smith, and Kyron Johnson. It might be a surprise to some over Patrick Johnson.
Yeah, so that's where we differ just a little bit. I have Reddick and Smith. Obviously, I kept Patrick Johnson. It was notable to me that last year they got Patrick Johnson on the field, even in December. I feel like they like him. He's good on special teams. Kyron Johnson, I thought by the end of last year was going to be able to make some kind of impact, and I don't think he really did on either. Obviously, he made no impact on defense because there was no room for him. But I just don't. I think he kind of wasn't he one of the guys who missed the tackle on that return in the Super Bowl. I think he was. I think so. One of the people culpable there.
But. Yes, but overall, I know Kyron Johnson is more explosive than Patrick Johnson.
100%. I wouldn't argue that,
and that's why I have him on there. I remember Andy Weidel saying on that press conference how how boy he just stood out the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously Nolan Smith getting drafted doesn't help Patrick Johnson or Kyron Johnson in terms of even playing on defense. But it's either or. I could change my mind once we get through August, but that's the way I'm going now.
Right. And then one guy, I kept him as an edge, but he's probably a defensive end. Although who knows yet, because we have yet to see him get on the field, but we know the Eagles like him. Is Janaris Robinson. The guy they claim off waivers. So that would be my 12th, right? That was sort of the difference. You had Patrick Johnson, I had Kyron Johnson, you had Kentavious Street, I didn't. I have Janaris Robinson making it. But that's how we both get 12 out of it.
He was actually signed off the Vikings practice squad, which tells you
that's what I meant. Yeah. Yes.
Last year. I know he went up getting hurt. He went on IR and he just wasn't ready to play. But man, 6'5", 255 to 260 and long.
Yep.
He's a 4th round pick.
I was just about to say the guy was a 4th round pick.
Yeah. Might as well take a look at him.
Might as well take a look at him. 100%. But listen, so I can totally see them going Kyron Johnson because of the edge explosion. I think there's no doubt about it. And I could totally see Kentavious Street, who's a good veteran, who's played well at times in this league. Not great, but played well enough to have a job. I could see him edging out Moro Jomo as well. So I just noticed that this team has sort of, I don't know if it's banked on or gambled on or just tried to put their faith more in their late round guy like Patrick Johnson, Kyron Johnson, Teron Jackson. Did Jacoby Stevens make the initial 53 and then get waived to the practice squad?
Sounds correct. I think he's out of the league, isn't he?
I thought he was still on their future, or I thought he was back with them. Is he not?
I don't think so.
I mean, he might not be. Okay.
Yeah,
but either way, it just seems like they lean that way. They want to give their guys a shot. So that's why I went with a Jomo there.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the only one where I struggled really hard is I wanted to put Janaris Robinson on there. I just know Kyron Johnson, the guy that they really thought has a chance to be an edge rusher, but he's small. And then he is. Because Nolan Smith, look, if Nolan Smith wasn't here, I would have Patrick Johnson on there with Kyron Johnson. Just, that's what it comes down to. So that's that. You want to get the inside? Yeah,
let's go to inside linebacker in a second. First, I want to just pause real quick to hear a word from our great sponsors. All right, inside linebacker. This one was pretty tough. Not because there's such great competition, right? But because you need bodies there. You can't just keep one guy, Nakobe Dean, or two, right? You got to have backups. And I was struggling to find guys that I thought deserved backup roles. But as I look at your list, I see we both had the same struggles and the same mindset. So,
I had 3 locks. Mm-hmm. Well, I shouldn't say locks. 2 are locks, Dean and Morrow.
Correct.
The question is, Christian Ellis is a really good special teams player. He's also one of their most explosive guys. And Van Sumeren, paid him decent coin. He's got more size than the other guys. And I'm like, you know what? We got to get an undrafted guy on here. And look, TJ Edwards did it in 2019. He's my guy to do it. And look, he could be a starter. Not this season, but in Morrow's on a 1-year deal with no guaranteed money. He's no guarantee after the season. So Van Sumeren might be here for a while. We'll see.
So you and I think on the same wavelength again. I had, of course, Dean and Morrow are your first 2. They're your starters right now. But I was looking at Sean Bradley, knowing how important he is to special teams, looking at Davion Taylor, knowing that they once felt highly of him. And I said, well, you kind of have Christian Ellis now for special teams. Yep. And when it comes down to Ben Van Sumeren versus Taylor or Bradley, I almost think you give a guy a shot because you want to see what he gets. You kind of know what you've gotten so far from Davion Taylor and from Sean Bradley. Maybe you get something right. Exactly. To be honest with you, Adam, I think that this just really illustrates that Howie Roseman's probably I would think, is still going to try to look to make a move at this position.
Oh,
this is, if they get one injury, right? One injury, we're talking about Ellis or Van Sumeren in there to start. And it's a major injury, Yeah,
you said on the last show, you thought that they have to bring in another inside linebacker. I'm not disagreeing with you. And as I said then, the leverage is with the clubs. It's the most plentiful free agent position out there. There's so many of them, veterans who are still out there after the draft. And that once the draft is happening, it's over for having any leverage with clubs. The clubs have it now. Taylor's done nothing to warrant even being on the team. And Sean Bradley just gives you nothing on defense. He's not going to play on defense. He only plays on specials, and he's a good special teams player. He's nowhere near the hype with this guy.
Right.
Based on what we've heard, he's solid in that area.
He's okay. He's a good special. Yeah.
The hype was ridiculous for him. Like he could be like an all-timer. Not that quite, but yeah. He's. I just I can't justify it. And Ellis is a better football player. Ben Summerlin, we'll see. Morrow and Dean. That's it for inside linebacker.
I thought it was notable that the Ravens did not take the 5th-year option on Patrick Queen.
Mm-hmm.
So you wonder if maybe and they drafted a linebacker, I think, in the 3rd round, right?
Yeah, they actually
Sampson?
did say, just so you know, they did actually say they have some interest in extending his contract.
Okay.
Patrick Queens. Yeah, they took Trent Simpson, who's really good. I know they're super high on him.
Yeah.
Kid out of Clemson. But again, as you said, he's a 3rd rounder.
Mm-hmm.
But look, because they're paying Roquan Smith ridiculous money, they can't pay Queen a lot. They just can't. But they pay and they're one of the few teams that run a 34. Like they could justify paying 2 inside backers.
Yep.
Because of the way that they run their scheme, but obviously the Eagles don't want to pay inside backers. That's just not what they do.
No, which sort of makes me think that if Queen were available for like a 1 or 2 year rental, or well, I guess it would be a 1 year rental, then maybe the Eagles would give a day 3.
I mean, for nothing, they wouldn't go for anything for him because it's just
well, that's how they got Tim Jernigan, right? They gave up like a low pick and then flip-flopped draft position in the 3rd round.
He's a good player. I mean, he's smaller, but he's a really good player and he could cover too, which is important. But again, they just don't put resources in it. But remember, Howie Roseman's always looking for what people call an opportunity to add talent. He's done it so many times, and I don't rule anything out when it makes the team better. As Bill Polian told us, you always look for an upgrade. Patrick Queen's better than any inside linebacker they have. It's not a shot at Dean. Just Patrick Queen's a better football player.
Yes,
and guy was a 1st rounder for a reason.
Yeah. No, 100%. So we'll see. Maybe something can materialize there. If not, maybe there's another guy in a similar situation. I had mentioned Kenneth Murray because the Chargers drafted Dion Henley pretty high, and I know Murray hasn't really given him exactly what they want. The Eagles.
Jim Schwartz's guy.
Yeah, it was a Jim Schwartz guy. Well, so we'll see. We'll see. There'll be opportunities if the Eagles want to upgrade, and they won't have to give up a whole lot. It just depends on who it is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. As we go into the secondary, you and I both keep 10. We both keep 6 corners. We both keep 4 safeties, so we're on the same wavelength there. The one thing I didn't realize, Adam, was how hard the decisions at the corner spot was going to be until I started to sit down and do the math and try to do the numbers there.
This took me, I'm not joking, 10 minutes to go through these corners because this is what happens when you have competition. People can make fun of it all they want, but they've got some undrafted. They have a bunch of undrafted guys that they do like, and they're back. Jobe's back. Goodrich is back. They have Ricks and Garner, who are this year's undrafteds.
Yep.
What I've learned for the Eagles is, particularly when they don't draft, like Greedy Williams, he's far from a lock to make the team. It would not surprise me if somebody beats him out, because I know how frustrated the Browns were with Greedy Williams staying on the field and just not being. He's hurt a lot. That's why they weren't bringing him back. And Greedy Williams, I think, is only making. I think he's got a very small guarantee. It might be $600,000. I think almost all of them, most of the guys that they signed were $600,000 at signing. And yes, I'm correct. $600,000 fully guaranteed signing. Oh, that's cuttable there. He's got to earn it.
Of course.
There's an opportunity here. Right now, he should be able to beat out Zach McPherson, but it's certainly not a lock to be that 3rd outside corner. But the guys who could potentially push are Jobe, Goodrich. Not so much Ricks and Garner, but Jobe is a better football player than Goodrich,
and
we'll see. I mean, I'm not ruling anything out here, but I would tell you I do have to wrap up my area on corners. I've got 6. There's a lot, but it's hard to say no to any of these guys. Bradbury, Slay, Maddox, Williams, McPherson, and Ringo. Now, Ringo's not going anywhere. We know that no matter what. They're not cutting him. It's McPherson now. 3rd year. It was 4-year deal. They got lucky that they haven't had injuries at outside corner. To me, he could be beaten out. One of these young kids could beat this kid out. To me, I don't think McPherson's who they thought he was as a coverage player.
I agree with you. The only problem is that, as we mentioned, a lot of these corners that they've brought in are these 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" guys. 195. They don't necessarily project as what you ordinarily see as slot corner. So other than Josiah Scott, who has not performed well in that spot, I don't know if they have somebody that can naturally replace Avonte Maddox in the slot, other than McPherson, who's probably a better slot corner than an outside corner. He was at Texas Tech too.
That would give him, there's no doubt that would give him value over those guys, but he's also much smaller in terms of height. He's under 5'11",
which is why he projects to a slot.
Yeah. I know Greg Cosell was not a fan of McPherson's at all based on his tape set. He told us that, when we told him on our show that this is one of the scouting department picks, so everyone liked him. Not quite the level of Avonte Maddox, but when they drafted him, that was also a scouting department pick. But what we had heard then in 21 is like, man, they love this guy. I don't feel it based on what we've heard over the 2 years. I don't think he's that. Now I know he hasn't got much of a chance because the veterans haven't gotten hurt, but I don't know. We'll when we get there to training camp, I believe that someone could beat this guy out. I don't think there's any question. There's going to be opportunity to do it. And right now, I have him on the team. Will not surprise me at all. And that's something we'll be looking for in training camp with these training camp battles.
Sure. So I have him too. We had the same top five: Bradbury, Slay, Maddox, McPherson, Kelee Ringo. Ringo was a 4th round pick. So he's not, and that made it so difficult. It was because you kind of knew Ringo is, as a 4th round pick, almost surely is going to be penciled into a slot on the 53. And McPherson, just based on the fact that they've drafted him and has some experience as the backup slot for now, made my 53. So that really left me one player left to get 6 among Greedy Williams, Josh Jobe, right, Josiah Scott, and then some of the guys like Eli Ricks and Goodrich. And we know how the Eagles feel about some of these guys. And I sat and looked and I said, Greedy Williams is a guy they signed to a 1-year deal in free agency. He's the perfect signing that we said they needed, like a veteran, someone who's played the position, who could go in and play outside corner, right? However, to your point, they signed him to a 1-year deal with very little guaranteed money. In fact, it sort of surprised me to see some of the reactions we got on YouTube videos in the past where people were saying, oh, he's going to be the future at corner along with Jobe, or he's going to be the future at corner along with Kelee Ringo. And it's like, well, maybe it could happen, but certainly the Eagles didn't think that when they signed him, that he's definitely the future of their corner, or else they would have given him more than a 1-year deal with very little guaranteed money that makes him cuttable. So I actually went with Josh Jobe as my 6 over Greedy, because sort of the same reason for going with Moro Ojomo over Contavious Street. You go with your guy. I mean, Jobe was here. And same thing with Patrick Johnson, right? He played last year. They liked what they saw of him. So it's really, to me, it's incumbent upon Greedy Williams to beat out Josh Jobe, because Jobe, he got injured last year, but he at least made the team, was a contributor on special teams. And I think in blowouts, he got in a few defensive snaps. But so I think it's Greedy's job to beat out Josh Jobe.
Yeah, I mean, I have McPherson on there also because of special teams, as he's
right,
and he's an important part of it. Yeah, look, I'm with you, man. Someone could push Greedy Williams off this team, or McPherson, one of the two of them.
Too,
yeah. I mean, that absolutely could happen. That's another of the training camp battles we'll be looking for.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we're going to get to safety in a second. First, we want to tell you about our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com or on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's also hear a word from our great sponsors, our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you go into Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get the very best deal.
And you want to get there because this is the busiest time of year for them. And remember, if you live in California, they ship cars. Just go to their website and they'll take care of you. They do a ton of business through the internet. People buy cars. They find it on their pages on their website, and they order them over the order and they ship it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Love them. Sky Motor Cars, always appreciate being partners with them for as long as we've been. All right, the fourth one, this one only took me like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and it was really just on one spot. Obviously, Terrell Edmonds and Sidney Brown are locks for 2 spots. I would think Reed Blankenship, based on what he did last year,
Yeah.
unless he falls on his face in training camp, is a third safety. It really then, Adam, came down for me between Justin Evans, who they signed to a 1-year deal, injury-prone guy, and Kevon Wallace, who, despite the fact has not been overly impressive and you could say disappointing, they did find ways to get him on the field last year.
Yeah, they did. They did. Evans is better in coverage. I've got him on there. So I've got Edmonds, Brown, Evans, and Blankenship. Tristan McCollum's another guy. Super long shot to make it, but he's got height, weight, speed behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a guy that they'll look at. But the one, so to sum up, do you have the same 4 I have?
I had the same 4 as you. I really spent a lot of time on Justin Evans versus Kevon Wallace.
Okay.
But, you've got Kevon for 3 years. This is his last year. The money probably isn't that much different. And I just feel like if Justin Evans reaches his upside, he's obviously a better player for what you said, coverage than Kevon Wallace.
Yeah, Kevon Wallace, 1.01 million, no guaranteed money. Justin Evans has 600 grand fully guaranteed at signing of 1.59 million. So yeah, Evans over him is the way I would see it. But the battles to me are going to be, could Janoris Robinson be one of their defensive linemen? Can Patrick Johnson, Kyron Johnson, Moro Jomo versus Tui Pelotu and Kentavious Street? And then the corners, as we outlined, you and I kind of see it the same way. There's an opportunity here. Nothing's given to Greedy Williams. Should he be the top outside corner? Yes. Is it a lock? No. Because the contract tells you so. If he was getting $2 million fully guaranteed, different story.
Mm-hmm.
The way contracts tell you a lot, folks. That's why we talk about them a lot. And you and I don't have Josiah Scott making it.
Correct.
Josh Jobe, I think you do, right?
I have Jobe making it over Greedy Williams, yes.
Ooh, okay. Look, that's a good call. I certainly could see that happening. We're going to look at that in training camp. And I want to take a look, as we said, on Tristan McCullum, Janoris Robinson. And to summarize, in the inside linebacker group, there'll be some good battles in training camp. So the bottom line is there are a lot of jobs open.
Yep.
Particularly in the back end. Let's be honest about it. But that's good. Look, competition is always good. And there are a lot of good, talented young players who are going to get a shot to prove themselves in training camp.
Well, here's what's really fascinating. I wrote down a list of names. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl. Oh, by the way, we should do specialists. Obviously, Jake Elliott's the kicker. Yeah. Rick Lovato is the long snapper. I went with the rookie, Tyler Zentner, to win the punting competition.
Okay.
Did you take Zentner or did you take Sipos?
Zentner, yeah.
Okay, so we both are on the same page there. So that goes into what I'm about to say. Okay. The Eagles made the Super Bowl last year. They had their best team that you and I always thought was the best 53-man roster that they've ever put together. But here are all the names after us doing this projection of guys who were on the 53 last year that we don't have making it this coming year. Trey Sermon, Josiah Scott, Marlon Tuipulotu, Sean Bradley. Did you have Opeta on yours when we did offense? I can't remember.
We did. Yeah, I did.
Okay, you did. Okay, that's fine. Sipos, that's 5, right? And Kevon Wallace would be 6. And let's see, Greg Ward was on the 53 by the end of the year, right? Or was he just an elevation?
I think, yeah, he was elevated.
Okay, but still, six guys. Tyree Jackson did not make it for us. He was on the 53 at the end of last year, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be 7. Did you have Covey making it?
I do.
You did. Okay, yes, I did too. But still, 7 players, and most of them, by the way, that we mentioned that are played on special teams. So that's probably a good thing for the Eagles because that's an area they really need to get better at. And maybe some of the younger guys are better.
Coverage and the punt. Sipos was a major, not major, he's a disappointment. There's no question. He got hurt, unfortunately, and they came back. He certainly wasn't good. Brett Kern wasn't very good. They got to get this punting situation corrected. Field position's super important.
Mm-hmm.
The Zentner kid could kick and punt, but obviously he's going to punt here. And that also be, as you said, it'll be another training camp battle, man. There are going to be a lot of them.
Right. Also notable is that neither of us had Tanner McKee make it, the quarterback that they drafted, and neither of us had Dan Arnold, the tight end that they recently signed, veteran tight end, make it too.
And
So
he could absolutely push Calcaterra off. It would
I
not
agree.
surprise me in the least if he put him off. Calcaterra's got the advantage because he was drafted. It does mean a lot to the Eagles. I know from talking to someone in their front office over the years, they always want to give their guys a chance. Even the low end 6th and 7th round picks, they just need to see something. And obviously, Calcaterra certainly did a nice job when Goddard got hurt. Him and Stoll, the numbers weren't huge, but he showed he can play in this league, and he was a willing blocker. There was a smaller guy, and that's also another training camp battle.
Awesome. Love it. That's our 53-man roster projection. And I really like the way we kind of hashed it out there and tried to figure out what we see coming up. And, it's going to be a fun off season and training camp. And so next podcast, we'll have Greg with us. That'll be the first part of our schedule breakdown that we're going to do with Greg, a 2-part series. Looking forward to that. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in the Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.